The first little bit of this, I just wanted to work through a couple of slides fairly quickly as a reference. Then we're going to go into the 3 steps and the slow motion inquiry. So right now we're working with relational intimacy, friendships, partnerships, however that might be. And the one thing that we know about the nervous system is that if we're in a survival response of fight, flight, or freeze, we're not going to have access to compassion for ourselves, but also for connection with other people. We're going to be on guard. So that makes sense. And we have that predictive brain. We have the neuroception, which has that negativity bias. Better be safe to protect ourselves, but then we miss out. We're not connected. Another thing that can happen, especially in partner relationships or family relationships, places where we know each other well, is that sometimes people might get emotionally flashed back. There's a couple of links here. Pete Walker is a therapist who wrote Complex PTSD, The Tao of Fully Feeling. Wonderful resources on his website as well. So there's a couple of links here. And what he's saying is that sometimes we're in an emotional flashback. So we're not necessarily having an image or a memory of a certain thing, but we're flashing back to the feeling states of childhood. Fear, shame, abandonment. And we can also really see here that would not be possible to be in intimate partnership with somebody or in close friendship with somebody if that's what's going on. And also that if we're in a family setting, that might be part of what's going on for us, is that we're emotionally flashing back. So he has a practice, and I've done a guided practice as well. A link to that is on there. This is also from Pete Walker. Another thing that he suggests is to have a timeout when we're activated. One of the things that we can do is to start to really recognize I'm starting to be really activated right now. I notice my breath is different. I might be holding my breath or breathing more quickly. I might be getting hot. I might be feeling anger. Or on the other side, I might be going into a feeling of shut down or being numb. So he talks about taking timeouts to stop the bleeding caused by a critic on the rampage, and that we don't want to say things when we're activated that wound other people, that would lead to other people not really trusting us, or maybe we don't trust ourselves either. This is really helpful. Somatic mindfulness, recognizing what's going on in our body, that we get that early warning and we can say, okay, I want to call a timeout here. Either maybe it's the other person feels like they're overly aggressive or we're feeling that way. We're just too triggered to be lovingly confrontive, as he says. So that he has a list of different agreements that you could talk over with whoever it is you're in conflict with. When you're not in conflict, talk it over ahead of time. That he and his wife have used for many years. And that's in that link on the page as well. When we're in fight, flight, or freeze, if we're in fight, people are scared of us and then they protect themselves from anger. So we're out of connection and so are they. When we're in flight, we're not available. We might physically leave, we might leave emotionally. And then when we're numb or disconnected too, it's hard for someone to connect with us because we're not connected with ourselves. So when we're in relationship and when we're trying to build intimacy in relationship or we're trying to avoid harmful conflict, a couple of the things we could really be looking at is what's happening in my nervous system. And that's an ongoing practice that we do. But also what's happening in their nervous system. If we have that feeling of, I don't know about their mood right now, I'm feeling like I'm walking on eggshells, this isn't probably the time to bring something forward that's going to be hard for us to connect around. So to choose our timing wisely, and not to say that we're never going to address things, unless it's somebody that we really they're never regulated enough that we can. And in that case, we have some other decisions to make. But what's the most skillful way that I can approach this right now? Is this the time? Am I regulated myself? Am I tired? Am I cranky? Are they? And that's not the time to be getting into something that could potentially blow up. I put this into 3 steps. Step 1 is what we do all the time. We do it in daily practice. We do it when we're noticing something's going on. Like someone said something the other day. I had this initial reaction. I felt the fright in my body. And then I really went right into deeper breaths. I went into the tools. We want to have the tools in our toolbox. We want to be able to see right now that thought, that image in my mind is dragging me down into the past. I'm going to put it in a frame. I'm going to put space around it. I'm going to take my eyes around the empty space a few times. Or that tone of voice, oof, I'm really feeling kind of rattled around that. I could do some cyclic sighing. I could hold my own hands. So we have these tools that we use. The more we use them on a regular basis, the more resilient and strong our nervous system is, and the more likely we'll remember to use them. Think for a moment, and if you wanted to practice one or two of them right now, even hold your hands, notice your feet and your seat. Look around the room, notice that you're here and you're safe. There's nobody right now arguing with you. We want to always be using these tools to keep coming back to this moment in time, because right now in this moment, we're doing an inquiry, we're looking into something, we're not actually in a situation. Step 2, we're going to do right now a slow motion walkthrough where we're going to replay a previous situation. Don't pick a 10 out of 10. Don't pick the worst fight you ever had. Don't pick something that happened yesterday that's really hot button for you right now, but pick something that made you uncomfortable enough that it comes to mind. And take a moment to settle on something. We don't have to find the perfect one. Something will come forward. It might be somebody that is medium stakes. Maybe you had a situation at work or with a friend that's not super close. Or maybe it was with a close friend, but it wasn't too bad. It was something that's workable in the moment. Pick something and then notice as you're bringing it up what just happened in your own nervous system. So one of the ways we would notice that is what happened to my breath. What happened to my body? Did I notice that my shoulders came up around my ears a little bit? And what is happening in their nervous system as you're remembering this? At the time, you might not have really been thinking about that. But as you're thinking about it now, if you could run a video in your mind, what could you tell about their nervous system? You might have noticed that they were hot in the face, or they were a bit shaky, or maybe their voice was hard or shaky. Their body language, what they said. How can you tell from the things you're remembering, the visuals, the audio, what was probably happening in their nervous system? As you're bringing that up, use the tools. Really stay present here. Let it form. Let it get enough intensity so that you can feel it, and not to let yourself get too dysregulated. Maybe it's something that you were angry about. They did that thing another time and you got angry. You knew that that wasn't going to help. Or maybe you could feel yourself going into that. I'm just disappearing here. What does that feel like in your body to let that be here? So use tools like tapping on your forehead, put it in the image, in the frame, open your eyes. Opening our eyes is often very helpful to remember that we're here, not in the past. That person's not actually here. Notice sensations. What's happening in your stomach? Do you have a feeling of dread in your body? Anger? If the thoughts and sensations are manageable, then we can just sit with them and just notice. Stay regulated, witness what's happening. If you're starting to get dragged into the past or into traumatic memory, then use one of the tools. Like with sensations, you might notice the space around the energy. You might notice the description. Is it cold? Is it hot, this sensation? Is it moving? Is it still? Keep coming back to this witnessing. I'm bringing forward this incident that happened. This is what I think was going on in their nervous system. based on the evidence. We're not trying to mind read. That's not. We're really just looking at, we have a certain amount of experience with this. We can tell when somebody's angry. We can tell when they're shut down. What are you witnessing? And let's let that conclude now over the next 30 seconds or so. And as you're bringing that to a close, notice your body, notice your feet and seat. You might want to move your body around a little bit or stand up and shake. I thought we could do a bit of cyclic sighing. This is a break between one section and the next. Deep double inhale. And then a long, slow exhale, like you're breathing out through a thin straw. And as you're doing that, let your whole body soften, especially your face, your jaw, neck and shoulders, your chest. Let yourself come back to here, back into regulation. We were doing an inquiry. Now we've let that move to the background. A couple of more deep double inhales. And now let's go into the next step. The one thing that we know about people is that we're pretty predictable. If someone makes you feel like you're to walk on eggshells around them, it probably is going to happen again. If you know somebody who's hothead and they get angry about something, and maybe it's not even something to do with you, maybe it's something else, but it makes you feel uncomfortable because they get really dysregulated, they're probably going to do it again. We have a lot of habitual patterns in our nervous system. We tend to have a lot of similarity in how we see things from one day to the next, our neuroception, our evidence pool that we use. So by bringing ourselves into awareness of this is what happened before, and how am I going to work with it next time? So somatic mindfulness, we can notice our own body, we can notice what might be happening with them too. We can probably predict, okay, when that person starts to yell, this is what happens in me. Or when I start to yell, this is what happens in them. Or maybe we both yell, or maybe we both shut down. So let's bring that example back and think of a couple of ways that you could stay present to yourself. The big one for me is to work with the breath with someone that I used to be in regular contact with, and I'm not anymore. I would really make a commitment to stay present with my breath, that I would notice how I was breathing. I would breathe with that smooth continuity. It might be that you're not going to tap on your forehead, maybe when you're talking with this person. Maybe you're tapping on the side of your knee. It's very common for people to hold their own hands, even if you're sitting at a table or a meeting or something. So it might be that you're going to hold your own hand while you're replaying this. Let's bring that up again, and we're going to do that slow motion walkthrough again. So whatever the first scene is, bring that to mind. And let yourself have that come to life in your mind. So notice the environment that you're in, the look on their face, the words that are being said. Let yourself bring that to life. And as you're doing that, stay regulated. So we're not going over the old one, but we're using our sense of predictability to imagine the next time it happens with that person, something similar. What is likely to be how it starts as we're getting into it? What are the body language from them? Is it a tone of voice? How do we know when it's getting started again? And maybe it's we're going to come home and we have some indication as soon as we walk in the door that things are going to go sideways. What would the evidence for that be, or what would those indications be? Notice how you feel in your body. When we know we're starting to get into something, we often have a feeling of dread. Okay, keep yourself kind of settled. We're witnessing this. We want to bring ourselves into it enough that we can feel it, but not get carried away. What might you use as an anchor? And as you're letting this play out in your mind, and you're noticing, this is what I think is happening in their nervous system as well. I'm noticing I feel I'm tightening up through the neck and shoulders. I notice my breath. I'm holding my breath a little bit. I notice I'm starting to disconnect or whatever your experience is. And what's happening with them? What can you tell? And knowing what might be happening with you and with them, what might you do that's different? What might you say? One of the things we could definitely say is, I'm feeling a bit activated right now. I'd like for us to postpone this discussion for about 20 minutes. Are you okay with that? Or I'm not feeling comfortable having this conversation right now. You could turn around and walk out the door. I'll be back. I'm going to go for a walk and cool down. What might you do? Of course, the other person will have some kind of a response to that, which you can probably also predict. So you could do this in a few different steps. You could say whatever it is you're going to say, like, I don't think this is the right time for this. I've had a really tough day. I'd like to postpone this until after we've eaten, or whatever that might be. See yourself saying it. Or maybe you're pretty calm and you're making a bid for connection and they're really numb or disconnected. They're not responding. And then how might you work with that one? You feel that in your body. You take a few breaths. What might you say or do? I know it's important for you to tell me about that thing that happened for you at work. And right now, I'm really feeling like I just need a hug. Could we postpone that and could we connect for a few minutes first? Or I really need you to listen. Right now, there's something big going on for me, and I'd like you to attune with me for a minute. Could we do that? Try to stay regulated yourself as you're working through this and imagine how that might go. It's probably going to go better than not being present and regulated would have. The other person then has an opportunity to step forward and step up. And your mind might be going, oh, that's never going to happen. They're never going to have the capacity for that. Or it might be true. That's probably based on the past, on evidence. And if that's the case, it might be, I'm going to get out of here or I'm going to do something else. At least I could stay present and not engage in some kind of a fight, flight, or freeze response myself. Let's stay with that for another minute or so, and then we'll come back. What might you do that's different? And then as you're coming back, really just look around again. Notice what's here. Notice if you need to do something with your body. On an ongoing basis, one of the things we could look at is this person or is this relationship something that has some potential for a different pattern? Could we talk about it later? Most of the time, that's a yes. Sometimes it's not. Most of the time, we can say, I'm not happy with how that keeps going on. I'd like for us to talk about this now while we're not upset. Let's talk about how we might make that go better for us next time. That's another hard conversation to have too sometimes, but oftentimes that's a worthwhile step that we could take next as well.